Welcome to the Jehovih Chronicles with your host, Cosmon Cal.
Right back like I left something. It's your hostess with the mostest, holding that fire like a roach clip. Your naga, your nerve, fresh up off of that curb jelly, jamming preserve, Cosmonia, right back up in it. Hey, we were having a conversation last night, and a fellow sister. It started on witchcraft and all that, but it got into the specific realm of autism and Down syndrome. And I was letting them know that a lot of the what we call Down syndrome today, right, starts in the Down syndrome, autism, in the results that we see, right, that today is produced chemically, right? I gotta be careful. Allegedly, right? The different inoculations that we force upon our children within the first 2 to 5 years or 7 years of life. You dig what I'm talking about? Are turning children autistic, allegedly. Now, so what we're seeing done today, chemically, anciently, right, was started by the process of head flattening and head binding. Why? The purpose is to produce a seer or prophet that can interact with the angels. This is a unnatural process, right? It is a forcing of the thinking and reasoning and judgment parts, or the frontal lobes, right, to be smashed back in towards the center of the head, towards what they call the more light receiving or crown chakras of the brain, in a sense, forcing clairvoyance unnaturally, right? Now, clairvoyance and clairaudience have always been in the human experience, right? There's always been people who have claimed and have, or gotten in contact with some type of spirit entities, and they've gone on to be able to be proven, in fact, that the person is not crazy and they are having this experience. So with that, I just wanted to give some background information, right, on the whole idea, and to let people know that, especially my Aboriginal folks, because y'all hella spooky. You dig what I'm talking about? Y'all extra scary, but y'all don't know why y'all extra scary. You dig what I'm talking about? Because y'all know the spiritual things of this world are really true. Whether you want to, big that up or anything, the proof of that would being that most of y'all believe in a God or some creative force of the universe. Huh? And you can use that in comparison to your other ethnic peoples, you dig what I'm talking about, of the world. You dig what I'm talking about? You are even far surpassing them. You have been and will continue to be the most spiritual people in the world. You have also been America's backbone and moral acumen since colonizers came here. You've always been the upstanding, or hence God's people, right? Let's get into a little of this information. Just show the little video, and then we'll jump right into the O.
In 1852, James G. Swan began living amongst the Indians on Willapa Bay, 25 miles north of the mouth of the Columbia. He gave this account of the practice of cranial distortion. The most singular custom among these people is that of flattening or compressing the head of the infant. Where this custom originated is hard to tell. Lewis and Clark state that it is not peculiar to that part of the continent, since it was among the first objects that struck the attention of Columbus. But, they add, wherever it began, or what was its origin, the practice is now universal among the tribes west of the Rocky Mountains, in the region of the Columbia, and it is confined to them. For, with the exception of the Snake Indians, who are called Flatheads, the fashion is not known to the east of that barrier. The method adopted to produce this deformity is as follows. A cradle, like a bread trough, is hollowed out from a piece of cedar, and according to the taste of the parent, is either fancifully carved or is as simple in its artistic appearance as a pig's trough. This cradle, or canem, or canoe, as they term it, is lined inside with the softest of cedar bark, well pounded and cleaned so as to be as soft as wool. On this, the infant is placed as soon as it is born, and covered with the softest cloth or skins they can find. A little pillow at one end slightly elevates the head, and a cushion of wool or feathers laid on its forehead. An oblong square piece of wood or bark, having one end fastened by strings to the head of the canoe, is now brought down on the cushion and firmly secured by strings tied to the sides of the cradle, and causing the cushion to press upon the child's forehead. The infant is then so bound into the cradle that it cannot stir hand or foot, and in this position it remains a year or more, only being taken out to be washed and for exercise. This pressure on the forehead causes the head to expand laterally, giving an expression of great broadness to the face, but I never perceived that it affected the mind at all, although it disfigures them very much in appearance. I have seen several whose heads had not been thus pressed, and they were smart, intelligent, and quite good-looking. But they were laughed at by the others, who asserted that their mothers were too lazy to shape their heads properly. This flattening of the head appears to be a sort of mark of royalty or badge of aristocracy, for their slaves are not permitted to treat their children thus. But, although I have seen persons with and others without this deformity, I never could discover any superiority of intellect of one over the other. The practice of cranial distortion wasn't just confined to the Americas. It was also practiced in the Pacific, Europe, Africa, China, and Japan. Skulls found around the world.
Now, the question I have to ask is, how does this practice get all over the world? Are y'all trying to tell me anciently, thousands and thousands, 3, 4, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago, that people were getting in boats and they took head flattening from America to Japan? Well, then, if that's the case, how are they there at the same time? How are they in Africa at the same time? How are they in India at the same time? How are they at Europe at the same time? Keep that in mind, right? And what you need to keep in mind, ask yourself, how does it go worldwide? Right? It just pops up, everybody has it. Right? Keep that in mind.
Show the practice was at one time widespread.
And then keep in mind also, what would they be flattening heads for? Could it be a purpose behind it?
This modification to the growing skull has generally been used to mark the social position of an individual in a manner visible to and recognized by other members of the society. The modifications are interpreted very differently from one culture to the next and demonstrate different ideals of beauty and deformity.
So we see this is a practice practiced in America, but not only in America, it is worldwide, right? Now, the dope part about Owaspy is not only does it tell you world history, but it allows you to put it on a timeline, right? Now, with the information I'm about to bring out, we got to put it on a timeline so you're able to, wrap your mind around the situation of what's going on and put it in a place and time to see how ancient the practice really is. You dig what I'm talking about? Mind you, head flattening is still practiced today. You dig what I'm talking about? It was heavily practiced by people in the Americas, west of the Rockies. You dig what I'm talking about? And in Africa today, in many parts of other parts of the world, head flattening is still a big thing. But Owaspy allows us to put this on a timeline, right? And it explains to us that this event, this head flattening event, is taking place during a time called the Arc of Lu, or the 22nd arc cycle after the creation of man, or 66,000 years after the creation of upright thinking man. That timetable on the Gregorian calendar leaves us between 7053 BC and 3953 BC, a 3,100 year span of time. Now, during that time, the very first prophet of the world, Zarathustra, or the great Zerusht, comes onto the planet. But 1,000 or so years later, a false god takes it upon himself to claim that he's the creator, and his name is Ahura. In many of the Aboriginal ancient tales of the Americas, they tell you that the great false god is named Atura. It is the same Ahura of East Asia, also the same Ahura of Persia, right? And it's a reason that they're just in those specific places, but that's a whole nother thing, right? So we're in between the time of 7,000 to 3953 BC, basically 7,000 to 4,000 BC, or roughly 6,000 years ago, right? It gives us a way to look at what was happening in those times, right? And to look at the nature and makeup of man on earth at that time. Right? Now, these then, so we're going to get into the Book of Divinity real quick. This is 11 and 13. Right? Going to get into this real fast. It says, these then were the divisions of mortals on earth at this time. First, the Ions, who were the original faithists or believers in the Creator. And they were capable of prophecies and miracles to such an extent that all other people called them the sacred people. Now, these Ions that they're talking about in America would be what we know as your Mississippians and also your mound builder stocks. Right? And they were capable of prophecies and miracles to such an extent that all other people called them sacred people. Right? In Africa, they call them Twa, Patwa. Right? In Arabia, they call them Ara. Huh? Yeah. Different names in India. They go by also different names in Asia. Right? In America, they call these people she. Xi, she, like a girl, she. Guess what they called the people over in Ireland, Scotland, and England? Who built megalithic mound structures over there? The she. It's spelled AOX. Same word, same pronunciation. She. So when you go see that AOX on some of those old finds that they be digging up out the ground and at different archaeological studies, you now know what it means and know who built it. Now we're putting it on a timeline. 7,000 to 4,000 BC. Right? People are still calling the Ions, 66,000 years later, the sacred people. It says, nor did the great warriors of other nations and people molest them. The Ions lived secluded, right? The mound builders lived secluded and separated from all other peoples. Nevertheless, they were the seed of everlasting life on the earth. These are the little people, the oldest known people on the earth. Nevertheless, they were the seed of everlasting life on earth and the foundation for raising up prophets and seers for other peoples. So this is why when they tell you that all prophets and seers are from one line, it is true. But the line is more ancient than you can even think of. And it wasn't till the Ions start breeding with other stocks that even other people were even able to prophesy at all or have any spiritual ability to be saved into the higher heavens. Now watch this. Even as Zarathustra, who, by the way, was 30 years old in 7053 BC, right? 7053 BC, Zarathustra was 30. That's when he started his ministry. He was 30. Sound familiar? Anyways, even as Zarathustra's mother was of the Ions, that mound builder stock, that Twa stock, the little people, so was it with all men and women born into the world having suis and sargus or clairvoyance and clairaudience. For being of the Creator, they had faith in him and him only. The second race, equally ancient, was the Druks. The Ions in your Bible would be Abel. The Druks in your Bible would be Cain. The second race Druks, or the Canaanites, are the barbarian hordes, incapable of inspiration, except for their stomach's sake. And though they were told 1,000 times, behold, you have a spiritual body, they neither understood nor cared, and forgot it a moment later. And though it was said to them, behold, there is a great spirit, they did not hear, nor understand, nor heeded the words. The third race was the Ahuans, the large copper-colored people, born between what? The Abelites, or Abel, and the Druks, or Cain. Remember, these are people groups, not Abel is just a man and Cain is just a man. People groups, male and female. But when these people admixed, the ions and the drugs, the people with no inspiration and the people with all the inspiration, what happens is what is called hybrid vigor. So the resulting offspring is physically better in every way than its predecessor. Well, yeah, in a sense. And also on the other side, spiritually better than its predecessor. This is the point of hybrid vigor, right? Mixing two distinct family lines that have lineage from each other, which is called a line breeding. It produces what is called hybrid vigor. So this is why the Ahuans come out super large and big. They're very big people. Now, remember, the third race is the large copper-colored Negroidal people called Ahuans, born between Ions and the Druks, or Abel and Cain. Right? To this race, the Ahuans, the copper-colored people, in its early days, a commandment was given to them by God not to marry with the Canaanites. Why? Because you will produce a descending stock of children. Right? You already a 50-50, a person of light and a person of dark. So to mix back in with the dark will produce a 75% dark person. Hence, you're going in retrograde. But if the Ahuans mix back with the Ions, right, then you produce a 75% ion or light, right, with 25% Ahuan genetics, which 12.5% of that is still drug. See how that works? It's just numbers. It's just math, right? But they was told not to marry back with the drugs, right? So they wouldn't produce a lower child. They want to produce hybrid vigor, something better, right? And they had maintained that law among themselves by the sign of circumcision. Did y'all know that's what circumcision was for? It was for the benefit of the woman, so she could know who would breed her good offspring that not only would be dominant physically in the world, but also dominantly spiritually in the world, because there were people like drugs who they didn't have the, once they died, they petered out like animals. They didn't have the ability to resurrect higher and higher, right? So this is not only a belief thing, this is also a thing of the genetics. You got to have this in you. This is why all the prophets come from one line. Now, The following then was first beginning of the persecution of the believers or the faithists in the Creator. When Ahura usurped his heavenly kingdom, right? Remember, we talking about the false god, and appointed guardian angels over mortals. He determined to leave nothing undone in order to overthrow the doctrine of the Creator or the Great Spirit and all person. He decreed as follows: since the mark of circumcision, they have pride in being faithists, I will not have circumcision. After the third generation, 100 years, right? So how long is a generation, y'all? If 3 generations is 100 years, it's 33 years apiece. Right? To get specific, it's 33.3, but we ain't gonna go there. After the third generation or 100 years, whoever has this mark upon him is my enemy. He shall be pursued, and no prophet shall fall to his lot. Do not permit little children to be maimed for my sake. Rather, let them be circumcised in heart. Where we hear that from? Now, this Vedic expression, it seems to me, signifies rather let them be willing to have their hearts cut out than to worship falsehood. And when they was saying falsehood, they was talking about the Creator. Rather than cutting away their body, let them cut the falsehood out of their hearts, meaning stopping worshiping the Creator. Ahura also seems to be saying, let my chosen be known by their goodness of heart or an inner mark rather than be known by an outer mark. Here we can see Ahura's craft in using this edict so as to appear compassionate in order to ingratiate himself upon mortals. See the scheme? For rather than to protect children, his motives were to make a law against faithists and to prove his wisdom greater than the Creator's. Let's see how that works out. Right? And Ahura put no restriction upon his mortal followers marrying. And so it came to pass that those drugs, those so-called Canaanites, not slain in Hellas, which is Turkey, Greece, and Central Eurasia, all the way up into Russia, married with the worshipers of Ahura. The people in Hellas, Central Asia, Central Eurasia, married with the worshipers of Ahura, the people who didn't have circumcision, didn't believe in the Creator. And about this same period of time, the Creator brought the earth into a light region for 200 years. And when the Diva was in session, which is a council, the Creator's voice spoke to Div, who is the head of the Diva. Right? See how they didn't rework that? You think Diva, you get to talking about a female who is evil or something, and or Diva or is and Divan in the Vedic scriptures are now evil demons, when in fact Div is a title for the leader of a divine council. Just like God is the title for the leader of the earth and its heavens. Do not let my sons be cast down because of the sins of Ahura. Rather be wise and appropriate from his wickedness that which will be good in the end. For as it was not lawful for my people to marry with the drugs, behold, Ahura has made a law on his own account against circumcision. And it shall come to pass that or Ahura and his cohorts, right? One of them you end up going on to know. So this is how old this is. One of the cohorts who worked for this god, this false god Ahura, is Anu of Sumer. It's that old. So when I tell you 7,000 to 4,000 BC, roughly we about 6 to 5,000 BC right now. Do not let my sons be cast down because of the sins of Ahura. Rather be wise and appropriate from his wickedness that which will be good in the end. For as it was not lawful for my people, the faithless, the able to marry with drugs, Cain. Behold, Ahura has made a law on his own account against circumcision, and it shall come to pass that by their Ahura and his consorts sins, even drugs, right? See how Creator work? He get everybody onto the path. You dig what I'm talking about? That by doing this, you dig what I'm talking about? That even, and a drug is like your caveman, Neanderthal, Cro-Mag. These is the wanderers, the wild men of the forest and stuff. They up there in Europe and all that, and Central Asia and all that stuff. This is what they saying, right? Now watch. That even the drugs, the Canaanites, shall be raised up to learn of me and my kingdoms. And it came to pass, look, that a fourth race rose up in the world. And it was a mongrel. These mongrels today are what you would call negrito. Little, small, brown. This is your mongrel stock. This would anciently be called your Kimmers. Your orangs, your orang pate. You dig what I'm talking about? These is the people of the woods, but they little short people, right? They're not real big guys, right? They're in a sense mongrel because they're all admixed, right? So you dig what I'm talking about? This is where you get your negrito stock, and this is why you see them in the southern parts of Asia and the Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia out there. And it came to pass that a fourth race rose upon the earth, and it was mongrel, right? Or negrito, being dark and short and less noble. The Ahuans were red, copper color, and brown, and tall and majestic. The Ions were small and white and yellow. Primarily, they came in other colors too. And the Creator put these marks upon his people so that the races could be read in thousands of years. Again, I got to preface that. When they saying white and yellow, they are not talking about modern pale-skinned Europeans. They don't exist yet. Owaspy say it's going to be 3,000, 4,000 years, roughly about 2000 BC, or 0 AD, excuse me, roughly around 32 BC to 0 AD, or starting in about, let's just say 100 BC. What we would commonly know as pale-faced white people pop up on the planet. This is what Owaspy said. They said they're bred, right? It came to, and they come from brown people. That's crazy. But it came to pass that a fourth race rose upon the earth, and it was mongrel, being dark and short and less noble. The Ahuans, right? Copper-colored people were red and brown and tall and majestic. That's our folks in America. The Ions were small and white and yellow. They're my other folks. And Jehovah put these marks upon his people so that the races could be read in thousands of years. Now, Ahura perceived this, One of his lords said to him, behold, the marks of Suis or clairvoyance are written. Then Ahura sought to disprove Jehovah in this. He said, right, behold, there are two senses to all men, the S and the corpor, or the spirit and the flesh. When one is in abeyance, the other acts. This is Suis, or clairvoyance. Call together your companions. You see that? When one is in obedience to the other acts. When the spirit is dominating the corpor acts. When the corpor dominates the spirit acts. He said, this is Suis, when one dominates over the other. Call together your companions and find a remedy. He asking his boys to look, y'all get this together, man. These niggas got seers and prophets and everything going out here. Creator tripping. I want my own prophets. I'm going to do this on my own. Call together your companions and find a remedy, for I will prove all things in heaven and earth. But watch this. Look at his lack of power. For 50 years, Ahura and his host tried by other means. Remember, this is a genetic thing. And remember, we read the ions are the cause for spiritual ascendancy. Right? So he tried to do anything but mix back in with Jehovah's people. So he trying to make him a prophet anyway, but except by mixing with Jehovah's people. Right? He said, for 50 years, Ahura and his host tried by other means to have a great prophet and seer born into the world, but failed. Ahura said, I know the way of the Lewis. A Lewis is a spiritual geneticist. Right? A spiritual geneticist, we get a remnant of that in the cartoonish rendering of a little bitty angel rolling around shooting love arrows in people's butts, aka Cupid or Eros, right? But in fact, it's even though that is cartoonish, it's based upon real things. There is an angel who precipitates cohabitation or genetic admixture. For instance, your mama like your daddy for a reason. You just thought they was hot in the pants. No, you didn't even know that the reason was to birth you. A better version of the combination of these two parents. Better versions. Boom, 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 boom. Children. Right? And when two good people get together, they produce a better child. When two bad people get together, they produce a lower child. Ahura failed, right? In 50 years. And you claiming to be the creator of sun, moon, and stars, you can't make a prophet? And the crazy part is, he know how to do it. He know how to make a prophet. But he know he got to go to Jaja. And he got to go to Jaja people to do it. And he just ornery. He just mean. He just wants to fail. But remember, even Ahura is the son of the creator. False God he may be. Hating on his daddy as he may be. He's nonetheless a son of the creator. Creator still ain't left Ahura. Ahura got away from the creator. See the difference? You can't get away from Creator. He everywhere. You dig what I'm talking about? So Ahura said, and so the idea of Eros and Cupid, angelic being bringing people together and love and all that, is based on a real idea, and it's called a Lewis, which is an angelic rank or a spiritual geneticist who brings certain people together to produce a certain resulting child. Right? So this why your mama liked your daddy. You ain't even know that. Huh? This why you like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife. This is why it's that quote unquote instant attraction. Because it's not just earth based. Huh? Remember, the unseen rules the seen. They decoy. He said, I know how they be making. I know how they do this. I know how the spiritual geneticists make this work. They decoy or they lure. They entice. The iron men, the mound builders. Huh? They entice the mound builders to go with the large copper-colored damsels. Y'all ever seen or ever wonder why tall girls like short guys? Well, here go a reason. I'm just saying, I didn't put it in there. But this show giving a reason back between 7,000 and 4,000 BC that the little niggas, the shorter niggas, is rocking with the bigger girls. We still see that today. Just saying. But I have sworn, This is what Ahura is saying. But I have sworn there is no creator. Now then, can I go to the sacred people? He asking a question. And after all, such a prophet might prove treacherous in my kingdom. Why would he prove treacherous in your kingdom if he was trying to do right? You would want a true seer, a true prophet to help your people if you was doing right. But remember, he know he doing wrong. And after all, such a prophet might prove treacherous in my kingdom. True, because we false God killers. We gonna make your stuff fall. Ain't no doubt. So he's like, man, stay away from them niggas, man. We can't go back over there. I done said it wasn't no creator. Now I got to come up with a scheme and a plan to make this kind of work. We need some prophets. You dig what I'm saying? We need to be able to speak to the people. So Ahura commanded his emissaries to weigh the matter for another 50 years and then to solve the problem. So Ahura's emissaries inspired thousands of experiments. Listen, thousands of experiments to be made, and they practicing it, inspiring people to practice it on people, real living people. Remember, these is dead niggas, spirits, influencing people. Watch this. So Ahura's emissaries inspired thousands of experiments to be made by which a prophet or seer could be made among the mongrels, the negrito stock, right? Which is the best he got that he can inspire for real. And Creator, listen, and Creator allowed him, still his son. He sent him, no, I don't want to send you no money into the joint. Still sent him $100 on Christmas. Out of nowhere. Everybody got a daddy like that. I ain't supporting you. You in jail, nigga. You dig what I'm saying? Go to jail out of nowhere. Your daddy that shot you a hun, nigga. You know what I mean? It's your daddy. Even a garbage can gets a steak every now and then, right? That's the saying. Huh? So Ahura's emissaries inspired thousands of experiments to be made, by which a prophet or seer could be made among the mongrels. And the Creator allowed them to discover that by what? By, this is what I was getting into, right? And how it leads to autism, right? Down syndrome and seership, right? And the Creator allowed them to discover that by pressing down the front brain of infants, they could be made capable of clairvoyance to see spirits. And infants were what? Strapped on boards, just like we just seen in the video. And another board strapped onto the forehead to press the head flat. Huh? Hold on. One sec. My bad. My computer's acting slow. I just wanted to show to you that this thing still happens today. And that all across the world, we see men with, elongated heads. You dig what I'm talking about? And we know that they're from head binding. You dig what I'm talking about? And head flattening, because we still see this up here. This is what's called a sagittal suture, right? And then there's one that goes in the back, but it hardens up over time in humans. You dig what I'm talking about? But look, all around the world, we see these elongated heads. Here go what we talking about right here. The boards being pressed on the head, pushing the frontal lobes to the back regions. Right? It's exactly what they're explaining. Right? Artificial cranial deformation. Right? All around the world, elongated skull from Samarkand, Chalkayan, 1st century CE, showing elongated skull. Portrait of Alchan Hun, king of Chinkilia, 400 CE. Legendary Iranian king Ratsum, depicted with a mural with an elongated skull in the fashion of Alchan Huns. Right? This is a sagittal suture. See this line to go over? See how they pressing the head back? That's a sagittal suture. Right? But we see some that don't have that, and that is different. That's not human. You should have this. See the little cracks and all that? Those is real humans. But we see some that don't got them. I don't know what they is. I ain't even trying to trip. But this is what they saying in a WASPy when they tell you an infant's, Hold on. Let me share it again. And infants were strapped on boards, and another board strapped on the forehead to press the head flat. And every day, the headboard was re-strapped tighter than the day before until the forehead, which holds what? The thinking centers, the corporeal judgment, your frontal cortex, right? Your frontal lobes. The things that, gives you judgment, right? Until the forehead, which holds the corporeal judgment, was pressed flat. And the judgment of the brain, right? The thinking centers of the brain, driven up into the light receiving regions at the top of the head, right? Ahura thus raised up prophets and seers, and they were willing instruments in his hands. And he sent tens of thousands of angels into all the divisions of the earth, teaching this to mortals, thus laying down the foundation for his grand scheme of reducing heaven and earth into his own kingdoms. This is how it gets worldwide, right? Right? The creator spoke in the diva, saying, permit even Ahura to do this. The Druks, right? The Canaanites, the people who couldn't be inspired, will heed what one of their own people say as a seer. More than if the same thing were said 100 times over by creators folks. The mound builders. Don't they always say they send the prophet of your own people to the people? Let's sink in for a sec. Let's take a further look down in the first book of God, chapter 24 and 20, right? Verse 20, right? We was just talking about Ahura, right? And we was talking about the people. I want to show y'all that the people who go on to be bred and were overtaken by this false god were the American Indians. And he goes on to say, I go on to produce an even greater people. These are your Algic people who would go on to be called Algic or Algonquin, right? Who found the United States of Guatemala, or the United Indian States of the Americas circa 3953 BC, almost 6,000 years ago. 22 years, as a matter of fact, 23 years, as a matter of fact, from being less than 6,000 years old. And Gichi, right, spoke to Hanga, saying, you shall take what? How do you say this, y'all? That's the word Eve. That's the name Eve. So the stories about Adam and Eve and all that, they older in America. You shall take Eve for your wife. Out of your seed, I will raise up a greater tribe than all other tribes. These are the Algonquins, the Negroes of America. And your firstborn son shall have your name. And your son's son shall be called Hoanga. Hoanga is the word for prophet. And your son's son. And so on forever. For I am wearied with the burdens of names. And your great spirit has spoken. Then Hunger asked, saying, what if I have no sons, but only daughters? Or what if my son or my son's son's lineage ceased to have sons, but only daughters? Then Geechee spoke, saying, the wife's first daughter shall take the name Hunger. So it came to pass that Hunger married and begot heirs. And the voice of the Great Spirit remained with the tribes of Hunger. And it came about that he who heard the voice, who was always the chief high prophet for the tribe, was called Hoanga. Still in the ancient Algic and Iroquoian tongues today. But what? But the people themselves were called Anguis, your modern day blacks and Negroes. They are who? The same that is endured to this day and is called Indian. Mind the term, right? We understand what he's saying. And this is an editor's print. This is what it says. It says the Angui is the Indian. And remember, Owaspi scribe describes the Indian. He says they're large, brown, copper-colored people with long, black, coarse, negroidal hair. They are symmetrical physically dominant, and they're symmetrically spiritually. So not only will they be the most high-raised spiritually people, raised people wherever they are, they will also be the most physically dominant people wherever they are. There's only one people that fits in North America. That is the American Negro, aka the Indian. This is one of the most amazing parts about Owaspi. It tells you who you are anciently. The generations of hunger were called first hunger, second hunger, third hunger, and so on. And this was the beginning of the counting of time in North America, or in America, period. Nor, and out of this comes your Olmec calendar too. Nor did any man. So they basically what they're saying is even the Olmec calendar was birthed in North America before it would have even traveled to Meso. Nor did any man know the number of generations before the time of Hunger the First. So that would include the old Mech. Huh? And the land became what? Full of cities, not huts and teepees and little shanty towns. No, full of cities with buildings and multiple stories and underground sewage systems and yeah. And the land became full of cities from east to west and from north to south. And the people all over the land dwelt in peace, tribe with tribe. But then came the god of evil, Atura, aka Ahura. Remember Ahura? Sowing evil in the temples and on the altars. How did he do that? With his own seers, right? With a false tongue and cunning, he came before the prophets, stealing away their eyes, stealing away their ears away, holding up his hand, saying, it is the hand of the great. It is the great spirit's hand. Atura or Ahura obsessed the nations of tribes of men to worship him. Huh? You ever seen them ancient statues that kind of look like it's Buddhist? They're way older than Buddha. Infatuating them with stories of far-off countries and the glory of kings and queens. And he set on foot a war of plunder, brought 10,000 times 10,000 evil spirits to aid and abet mortals in war. And Atura, the god of evil, Ahura, taught men to what? Flatten the head, to make profits. And lo and behold, the land of America, aka Guatemala, the land of the four tribes, or the land of the cross. Do we have a massive cross in America? Yeah. It's called the Four Corners region. Huh? The land of North America, Guatemala, became a land of seers, prophets, and conjurers, seeking evil for the sake of evil, consulting the spirits of the dead for war and for earthly glory in blood and in death. Besides the fact that we now know that the head flattening was a scheme for a false god to be able to produce people who could see and hear spirits basically mechanically, right? pushing the reasoning centers of the brain into the light centers of the brain, right? But this was what allowed me, right? This next text allowed me to tie it, to, the head flattening, the shape, the look of the people. You dig what I'm talking about? To autism and Down syndrome, right? Because the result of the head flattening is to dumb the man down to where he can't even take care of himself, right? Showing a lack of mental acuity, similar to what, if not the same, exactly to what we see in people with Down syndrome and autism. Although these results are caused chemically today, allegedly, we know the same results, or we're about to learn these same results, were produced anciently, right? To get prophets and seers and how these people fit in the world, right? Now, we're also going to learn another title called jinn, right? That is the ancient Arabic name for these seers. Later in time, mind you, we're 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years before Islam. So we're in pre-Islamic Arabic times, and I want to show you real quick that they don't even know what a jinn is, in fact, and that they've actually mixed in the idea of an angel with a jinn with a human, right? Why? Because they know that they're written about pre-Islam, right? So they can't say that they don't exist, but they don't know exactly what they do, so they mystify them. Look, the exact origins of beliefs in jinn are not entirely clear. They don't know. They're just making it up that this spooky thing. But look at the nature of what the real spirit was doing, what the real person was doing. We about to see that. The exact origins of the belief in jinn is not entirely clear. Belief in jinn in pre-Islamic Arab religion is testified not only by the Quran, but also pre-Islamic Arabic poetry. So they know the jinns existed. They just don't know what they are, who they are, or what they do. And since it comes up out of a religious ideology, they spookify it like angels. Yet they deify it like man. Why? Because it is a man. Watch this. And this is how I tied it down to what we call Down syndrome and autism today. Now watch this. In those days in Arabia or Arabia and Africa, right? In those days, Arabia was divided into many countries, some having many kingdoms, some having one city, and some having two, and some having as many as 6 cities. And they were constantly at war with one another, and the victors always changed the names of the kingdoms. The largest and most powerful always called itself the Sun Kingdom. And after the manner of the Persians. Men and women of learning dwelt in the Sun Kingdom, and they had tablets and books and maps relating to heaven and earth, all of which were kept in a library. And in the summit of this same building was an oracle for consulting the spirits called the Lords of Heaven. The spirits were called the Lords of Heaven, not the oracle. We're going to see what the oracle is called. Now look, for which purpose a man or woman whose head had been flattened in infancy, listen, sat by a table covered with sand. upon which the spirits wrote with the finger. And the person communing with the spirits was called a jinn, right? What does a jinn mean? A decree that cannot err. These people were called jinn. These are your oracles. This is your oracle of Delphi. In different oracles. They're at the top of these buildings. What they do, they go sit in these little small temples like you ever seen the ones in Sudan. You ever wonder what those little pyramids were for? To sit in front of the big pyramids? They're for the jinn. Right? Right? This is the person that's communing with the spirit. This is why they tie him with spirit. Huh? And a person with a flattened head and empathy sat by a table covered with sand, upon which the spirits wrote with the finger. This person was called an jinn. In the South Arabian tongue, Southern Arabic tongue, and was next to the Sun King in rank. Now, listen, no matter what wars took place, the library, the temple of the oracle, and the jinn itself, the oracle, were sacred and never suffered harm between enemies. Huh? It's so old they don't even know where it come from in their own area. Huh? But watch this. The kings kept scribes whose business it was to write and translate and to keep records of the kingdom. Besides these, there were gatherers of news who held the second rank of scribes. Now, when Abraham, yes, that man, the real one, and his people came into Arabia, right, especially into that part later called Egypt, we know for back through a WASP, this is 3953 BC exactly. 3953 BC, Abraham is 40. Let that sink in. The matter was entered into the records of the different kingdoms when Abraham and his people entered into the land that would later be called Egypt. Mind you, this is 850 plus years before there was an Egypt. Before an armor. Right? And it was entered into the records of the different kingdoms with special reference to Abraham professing to hear the voice of God, for he did not have a what? A flat head. So we know that's what they did. But this is where it ties. This is where I make the common sense leap of logic that what we're actually looking at when we see the jinn, and then to look at the people today is what we would commonly call Down syndrome, is that how the jinn or the flathead people, the seers, actually live and function. Watch this. Right? The matter was entered into the records of the different kingdoms with special reference to Abraham professing to hear the voice of God, for he did not have a flat head, and moreover, he had good judgment of his own. So the jinns don't have good judgments on their own. Quite unlike the jinns in the temples. Why they didn't like Abraham? Because Abraham gave no counsel regarding war or earthly gain. He was not favored by any of the kings and allowed to go his way unmolested. But what we wanted to see here is this, that the jinns were unable to take care of themselves, nor did they have judgment of their own. Why? Because their judgment centers of their brain or in the frontal cortex region of your brain were pushed to the top. Right? Producing what we would commonly call today Down syndrome, and autistic. This is why they tend to all have the same general look. Huh? Look. Look, just look at the faces. They have a general look. This guy here is one of the greatest sketchers and drawers in the world. He was born unable to talk. He has autism, but now he draws whole cities just by looking at them once. I'm talking about down to the people, down to the windows, down to what's in the windows. He draws a whole city by looking at it once. This is an autistic brother. You dig what I'm talking about? Y'all go check his story out. What's his name again? Hold on, let me go look it up for y'all real quick. And we're going to go and get up out of here. So that's the connection that I was making personally to autism, Down syndrome, head flattening, and seership. Thousands and thousands of years old, right? People with lowered judgment who generally can't take care of themselves. Right? So this is the leap in logic, right, that I'm making in real time, right? I don't even think it's a leap, because right here it says that Abraham had good judgment of his own, quite unlike the flatheads, the jinns, the people who actually spoke with the spirits. Now we're actually showing y'all that Abraham is proving that this ability is genetic. The reason why these people can't do it on their own or have no judgment of their own is because it was forced away from them. Right? I just wanted to show Owaspi's connection in the Americas and around the world to what we commonly know today as Down syndrome, head flattening, and autism has its auspicious birth in the head flattening system. You dig what I'm talking about? Thousands, 9,000, I would say basically 8,000 to 6,000 years old. The time of Ahuro's rule was roughly 6,000 to roughly 3,900. He had about a 2,700 year rule, a little over 2,000 years. And, with that being said, I just wanted to put this out there and salute to the family, man. You dig what I'm talking about? Hope somebody gets something out of this. If you got autistic family and all that, maybe you can look at them a little different and approach them in a different way. And, ask them about what they're seeing. Ask them about if they see spirits. Do they hear voices? Ask them, do they think that they're different? And see what they tell you. Right? That being said, I just need you to breathe in. Let that light in. Because I'm Cosmon. And I'm out.
Create a gang is crazy. Boy, y'all better pay attention.
We
fight as a single, impenetrable unit. That is the source of our strength.